We'd like to preface this week's episode of Ciné Rambles by saying me and Andrew are both fully in support of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes, we are.
The following podcast contains strong language. Hello and welcome back to the Ciné Rambles podcast. You're listening to Nick
And Andrew.
and we're here with your weekly fix of film-related reviews and ramblings. So, Andy, what have you been watching this week?
Not much.
No.
Been a busy boy. I watched Lilo and Stitch.
That's good. I haven't seen that for years, actually.
Lilo and
I need to rewatch
Stitch
that.
is so much better than I remember it being. Because, I haven't watched it for like 10 years or something.
I remember that was like back in the day when, we'd be taken to the Woolworths and be like, you can buy one VHS each. I remember I picked up Lilo and Stitch. So I watched that a lot growing up.
Lilo and Stitch is quality. It's so funny as well. And it's just really, really good. And Stitch is great. And he's adorable. It's good.
Okay. Yeah, I've not been watching much either. I've been a bit busy with other matters. But I have watched I've watched Apocalypse Now. I know you haven't yet.
No, I shall.
But we'll get back to that. But yeah, before we get on with the rest of today's episode, I've got a few bits of sort of housekeeping things and sort of responses. So, we have had a suggestion for what to call our new Andrew's Horror Education segment from Penny. So we're now going to be calling it Field of Screams.
Yes, which is so much better.
So now we just need a better title for film education and documentary education.
Yeah.
And we'll be flying fine. But yeah, I also need to now redesign a logo for that. But
Yep.
I'm sure I'll figure it out. I'm thinking like a red field.
Yeah.
Straightforward. Also, I wanted to come back on our Annihilation discussion from last week because I remembered
Okay.
because one of my main criticisms I said about it was the sort of the emotional coldness of its characters.
Yeah.
But what I then completely forgot to mention at the time is actually, despite saying that, there's actually some moments where the character warmth is genuine, like so well acted and so genuine, and I think that supports the idea that the coldness of it in the zone, not in the zone, that's Stalker, in in the Shimmer is deliberate. Like, so specifically, there's these flashbacks of Lena and Kane. It is Oscar Isaac's character. I had to look it up. There's flashbacks of them together, like before this all happened. Particularly, there's one where they're sort of just lying together in bed, sort of flirtily playing with each other. And they discuss sort of like the themes of the movie as well. But in the way they're flirting with each other and like being cute and coupley, there's something that's really like genuine and believable about it. Like more so than you see in normal Hollywood stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking that. When I watched that, I was like, they are very believably in love.
Yeah.
And that's quite rare to see. Like, they have a very, very good chemistry. And you don't really see that.
Yeah, this seems like a really incredibly difficult thing to pull off in a lot of Hollywood films. Like, again, I see it so rarely. But yeah, so I think the fact that that's in there is done so well compared with the emotional coldness later on, I think it therefore has to be deliberate. And, as a deliberate part of the film's sort of hostility and horror. So I guess that nullifies that criticism? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a great film.
Well, there is something about, like we were saying, like the emotionally cold characters, but that's the point. But it is hard to identify someone who is emotionally distant.
I mean, it's the difficulty when you get to that kind of art where you're doing things for a reason which still make it, by the rules of the medium less engaging, but it's for a point. It's also like, we're talking about Dark Waters, about like that section which is like deliberately boring to get across the idea of like waiting for years for results.
Yeah.
And like, it is making a point quite viscerally, but it's also being deliberately boring, which is a big no-no. And I feel like this sort of coldness of characters is on a similar note. Whereas like, I see what you're doing, but
like, another film we've already talked about like 3 times, but with Ad Astra, he was so cold and emotionally distant in that. It was like, it's really hard to care about him.
But then that's because I think that film is sort of secretly about like depression, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, the whole point of his character is that, and like they're making a point of like a statement about the character, and it is. I don't know. It's just, I think it's very, very, very hard to pull off.
Yeah.
And I think Annihilation does quite a good job, to be fair. Like, you do care about Lena.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those because there's the idea of like well, no, I won't say that because it's a spoiler. But like, so I mean, there's this whole, but this is less spoiler. But there's this general idea throughout of like losing your humanity and the sort of losing
Yeah.
that part, that sort of personality. And I think, like, yes, that's part of why it's there. So I think having the flashbacks to before to reinforce that change, and that's why we care for her. Maybe not as much for the others because you don't see much of them before they go in. But we see a lot more of Lena being a human before she goes into the shimmer,
Yeah.
which is ultimately like the key thing you need.
Yeah. Also, we have that scene where she gets introduced to the three other women. And,
Yeah.
they're bonding over, like, dinner or whatever. And there is still that, and you do get to see they are all, like, human and do have the emotions. And then I think it is, as soon as they go into the shimmer, they get the emotionally affected.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean that's what I had to add about Annihilation.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, it is a good film.
Yeah. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to do a very brief talk about was so when we were talking about Scott Pilgrim, I was trying to think of there was a book that I'd like seen where I was like the film is definitively better. And I remembered it now. It was Trainspotting.
Right.
So I want to do a very brief like couple minute thing about Trainspotting. So I hadn't finished the book. I'm about halfway through it.
Okay.
So, and this won't be a spoiler because this isn't about the plot, but this is about what made the film work, and this is about sort of the difference between the mediums. Because Trainspotting is one of my favorite films of all time, and one of the reasons I love it, and you can attest to this, is like the sort of the overall feel of it, like the pacing of it, and the sort of the use of the pop music, and it's the editing style. There's sort of this pulsing, pounding kind of like momentum to the story. It's so full of energy, and that's what makes it so engaging.
Yeah.
And the book, by comparison, because it doesn't have that same, it doesn't have the same editing techniques.
It doesn't have Lust for Life.
No, it doesn't. But that energy is lost from the book. It's a lot more drier, and without that energy, it sort of just doesn't have the same.
Drier.
Well, you know what I mean. Like it's just sort of.
Sorry.
And I mean, so it's still got like so it's done from like a It's basically written as like not quite diary entries, but first person sort of accounts of like various characters. But it's all kind of like, because it's sort of it is lots of different characters all doing their own little single chapters of like things they're doing, while the film is a lot more focused. It's like very much Renton's story, and we see it all from Renton's perspective, and it gives it this agency and coherence that makes a much more satisfying story. While the book, I feel, is it's kind of all over the place in the moment. Like there's no definitive plot line all the way through. It's just episodes in the life of junkies, and it doesn't have that agency.
I have a quick segue for you.
Oh yeah.
Just because you've made me think of something. Now we've, wanted to talk about arsehole characters and when they do and don't work.
Yeah.
Because they are, all the characters in Trainspotting are, they're undeniably arseholes, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, they're basically all terrible people.
Yeah. But they're so entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
And that's the same with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. When they are all so horrible people. They are just completely despicable, horrible, selfish, self-obsessed, terrible human beings. But they are so funny and they are so fun to watch. And it's, why does that work? And then in fucking Sex in the City, they're all complete twats as well, but I hate watching that.
Well, see, I think this is probably it must be to do with, I'd say, audience positioning. So the same kind of thing I mentioned with Joker in terms of like how in Sex and the City, I haven't seen it, but I'm guessing as the audience was supposed to be on the women's side and like agreeing with them being on their perspective. Well, like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, we're positioned to laugh at them and their horrible antics.
Yes.
And I think that's where it comes. We laugh. The catharsis and the of the comedy in It's Always Sunny comes from laughing at these terrible people suffering terrible consequences from the terrible things they do to each other. It's Charlotte Freuder, similar to something like Archer, which I think has a similar kind of dynamic with its terrible characters. Well, I think I assume Sex and the City is more like, oh no, her boyfriend is gay after all. Isn't that actually terrible? And you're thinking, well, no. because he's allowed to be gay, you know.
Yeah.
Or like, well, I mean, I haven't seen it. This is based on
I mean,
what you've told me. That's what I think the plots are like.
That is very similar to the actual plot.
That's a season finale tier storyline there, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what do you think? Does that ring
I
true?
think it's, audience positioning. Like, I think you go into Always Sunny and to Train Spotting knowing that these are terrible people, and at no point during the story do they ever, try to present them as good people.
Well, the one thing with Train Spotting is...
Well, with Renton, and he has the redemption and eventually turns his life around, but he's not exactly happy about it, is he?
No, and like obviously he still can't do some of the things he's done. But the point is the fact that I think because he shows... Even from the beginning, he's clearly like, I know I'm in a shit place. I'm trying to get out of it, but I'm being pulled down by my toxic friends. So we have that kind of sympathy for him. And then also the fact that, he does actually succeed and he was doing well until his friends pull him back again. Like, so there is definitely that kind of...
Yeah.
Because it's difficult to have a protagonist that's completely dislikable. But even then, that can still work.
You say that in Always Sunny, none of them are likable, though, are they? They are funny.
Yeah.
But... I mean, my favourite character by far is Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
Or Frank Reynolds, I should say. Like, but he is a, self-obsessed, horrible old man who is racist and sexist, but he's so funny. And I don't know, like, you never want them to be caught, do you? You want them to succeed because they have, I don't know, they have the charm, I think. But it's also, like, as you say, audience positioning, like, where in Always Sunny, it's almost a learning tool of, like, don't be like this. Don't be a complete arsehole because you'll end up like this. And they are all, they don't have any friends. They're all really poor and they alienate literally everyone.
Yeah.
And none of them can get partners because they're all horrible people, all of it, that they can't succeed in life because they're horrible. Whereas in Sex and the City, they are all horrible and they all succeed. And you're just like, I don't want to, what, they don't deserve their success because they are just as horrible as, well, they're not quite as horrible as the Always Sunny team, but,
they're not great.
They're not great. Like, they shouldn't have their success. And they also treat people like dirt and they are all filthy rich and just, it feels so undeserved. Whereas in Always Sunny and in Train Spotting, they get the, their retribution. They get
their just desserts, yeah.
Yeah, they get their just desserts. And that's why it feels a lot easier to like them, I guess, because you know that however horrible they are, they're going to suffer for it.
Yeah, because the writers are on your side, not theirs. So, like, don't worry, we're going to make them pay for it, yeah.
But whereas Sex and the City is absolutely desperate to make you like them.
So this is the thing, because, I mean, Sex and the City is a drama, isn't it, primarily?
It's a rom-com.
Oh, it is a comedy. Okay, because I was going to say, because this is all... So far, we're talking mainly comedy. And even though Trainspotting is a drama, there's definitely... It's definitely comedy-esque. There's a lot of sort of comedy inflections in its genre. But then if you think about... And I know you haven't seen this, but hopefully you'll know enough to maybe say something. But like, think about like Clockwork Orange, which is... It is a straight-up drama. Nothing funny about it. The main character, is a violent psychopath. He constantly rapes people for fun. And yet, he's still the protagonist, and it works. And you somehow do still feel sympathy for him. And to be fair, bad things do happen to him later on, which is basically, I mean, the whole plot is basically about like terrible things happening to him while he's sort of trying to redeem himself. I don't know. I'll tell you what, we will do this on film education eventually, so we'll do more about this then. But it's interesting, like how that works still. And I don't know if it's just because he is so charismatic or because he's literally just because he's the protagonist. He narrates it.
Well, I wrote an entire coursework piece on the likable villain and why audiences like them. And there is something about, we enjoy watching someone have absolutely no regard to the rules because it's like deep down what everyone wants to do is just do whatever they want,
Yeah, it's the expression of the id, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And because I did a thing about, the Joker in The Dark Knight. Like, he is, again, it's completely psychopathic, kills so many people in really horrible ways, but he is so charismatic and so unbelievably watchable and a joy to watch, that it's like I always find myself like, I love this character, but I feel like I shouldn't.
Yeah, but even
You know?
then, the Joker is still the villain to a hero that we still follow and is defeated in the end. Well, Clockwork Orange, he is the hero of the story.
Yeah.
And in the way, I mean, part of it is the fact that this violent, psychopathic, racist, rapist, and murderer is somehow still the good character in the story. Is in itself a part of the point of Clockwork Orange.
I suppose that shows you the power of filmmaking, power
Yeah.
of where they place you and who to follow and who to like and dislike.
Yeah.
Because like we were saying, like, very briefly the other day, we were talking about how in Shawshank Redemption,
Oh yeah.
with Red, like, they frame Red as being, he's just a sweet, innocent old man.
He's Morgan Freeman. He's so charismatic. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very, very charismatic. He's very likable all the way throughout the film. He's like the best friend of Andy Dufresne, and we know as an audience, because we've been shown, that Andy Dufresne is innocent. Whereas they position you to love Red, and you do love Red. Like, he's great. He was my favourite character when I watched that.
Yeah.
I think, probably everyone's favourite character, whatever. But the audience don't know if he's innocent or not. He could have murdered 3 people, but it's the way they position you is to love him, and you do love him, but you don't know what he's done, and like, that's so interesting that everyone is so quick to love him without thinking about what he's done.
Well, because it's interesting, because obviously, so we obviously have no idea what his crime is, but when we're first introduced to him, if I recall correctly, it's him trying to do his hearing to be let out on bail and being denied. So our introduction to him is being like, oh, well, this is a guy whose goal is to get out, and so he's just automatically be like, okay, well, that's what we wanted him to do. And that's a perfect example of how, audience positioning works. Just by how we are introduced to a character, it completely changes what we think of them and what we want them to achieve. Well, yeah, like you're saying, like a different film where we see like the crime, we'd be like, oh my god, he's terrible, don't let him out. Oh, thank god, they didn't let him out. And at the end, like, no, you've let him out, what are you doing?
Because a lot of that film was about injustice, though, isn't it?
Yeah, so there's almost like an assumption that, like, if he's friends with Andy Dufresne, who we know is innocent, he must be innocent as well, because that's the film. But then, there's no way to prove that within the film.
It's like he must have done something to end up there, But then, that's the assumption, though, isn't it? Like, I don't know. It's interesting, I find, the lovable villain, or someone who is undeniably bad, who everyone likes. Which is interesting, about the Joker. Why Joker from Joaquin Phoenix's Joker? Whackin'
Phoenix.
Whackin'. What was he called in that? Arthur Peck?
Not Arthur Dent. Yeah.
Peck? Maybe.
No.
I can't remember.
What was it? I do want to say Arthur Dent, but that's Hitchhiker, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Hitchhiker.
Oh, no, it is Arthur, isn't it? Arthur.
It is Arthur.
Arthur Penn something.
Peck.
Is it Peck?
Is it Peck?
I don't think it is Peck. I don't think it's Peck. It's got to be something else, surely. That's a terrible name. Sorry, any Arthur Peck's listening. Fleck, that was it, Fleck. Yeah.
Fleck. That was close.
I feel like there's going to be an Arthur Peck listening and be like, oh. Yeah, Arthur Fleck. I don't know where I got Penn from.
Well, right, whatever. I was going to say, like, I found him hard to like because it spends, makes you spend so much time like showing you how shit his life is.
You just sort of got exhausted by it, didn't you?
Yeah, he's not a likable main character, and I don't think. Oh, like this is no slight against Joaquin Phoenix, but I think this more of a script thing. But that he's not charismatic enough to draw you in and hold you. Do you know what I mean? Like comparing him to all these other ones we've offered up, who are again undeniably bad people, but they are so charismatic and likable. Whereas he was, I don't know. I feel like if he had all this shit stuff happen to him, but then was the charismatic character. I don't know.
Well, so I mean, my response to that is like, so if you think about like Trainspotting, I mean, so to put aside comedies for the time being, because it's always suddenly there's no arcs there. They are always bad. So they're I think like in Trainspotting, the point is Renton goes from being like a low life to bettering himself, while Arthur Flex is the reverse. He goes from being, obviously not a guy in great situations, but still, just trying to get on, and becomes this horrific psychopathic killer.
Yeah.
And that's so the point is, well, like Trainspotting, we get invested in him because he's making a difference, a positive difference. In Joker, we lose the sympathy for him. So I'm not sure it's like as such. Do we just lose faith from
do
writing?
You lose the sympathy in him though? That's the question.
Well, I mean, again, I've written 3,000 words on this exact question. I say yes because I definitely was not with him by the end. You become polarized against him, and I think the TV show, that scene exemplifies it from the way it's shot, the way it's presented, from like from my view that was from Robert De Niro's perspective. We see him ridiculing it, and I think the way it's shown, it seems to be that we're supposed to be on the side against Joker, and it's ridiculing the philosophy.
So I don't know about that because in that scene, Robert De Niro is such an arsehole. Like, I feel like if Robert De Niro wasn't an arsehole in that scene, then yes, you lose it to him. But even then, even with the Joker doing his final, like, this finale, he's dreamed of this his whole life, and it's like Robert De Niro still is a twat to him. So you think when he spoilers, when he
that's gonna be a very slim chance to put the spoiler avoid on YouTube. That's like a frame.
Yeah. When he shoots Robert De Niro in the face, it's like, obviously it was very shocking, but it still doesn't feel that undeserved because of how Robert De Niro's been presented through the whole thing.
I mean, I definitely see what you mean. I mean, to me, Robert De Niro was saying the things I was thinking, so maybe that's just the personal takeaway. And I was like, yeah, he's right, you're an idiot. But also the fact that like the main point I made in my essay was like, so the Joker, if it was from his perspective, his speech would be this like glorious moment. Everyone would be like hushed. It'd be like something, where he does a speech and everyone claps afterwards. Like it would be like a perfect thing. But the fact that he makes a fool of himself and he keeps tripping over his words, and he even like goes, oh, we live in a society. Like that's memed, and it's memed because it's silly. And I think, that's a deliberate silliness. I don't think that's supposed to be taken seriously.
I think that then is undone immediately in the next scene when he does stand up in front of a cheering crowd. Like, I think you're right, but without the cheering crowd bit.
Well, but then the cheering crowd, again, are we supposed to be in the cheering crowd? Or because, I mean, humanity's filled with idiots.
I think we are, though. He is idolised in that moment, and I think that detracts from that bit where you see him being silly, we live in a society, whatever. I also think in that final scene, if he had killed someone who had not been so villainized throughout, it would have been a lot easier to then instantly vilify him.
Yeah. I mean,
do you know what I mean? Like, all throughout the film, like, from the beginning, when you see Robert De Niro's, like, his quasi-father figure, who he looks up to so entirely, and then you see that, it's like, don't meet your heroes, whatever, but you see Robert De Niro just being an arsehole over and over and over again, to the point where when you shoot him, you're like, well, you're not like, that's terrible, but obviously understandable from the Joker's point of view.
I mean, I do agree with the Robert De Niro thing. Like, I think you're right. There is definitely he is shown to be like, even though he was his idol growing up, and then he turns out to be an arsehole, and he continues to be an arsehole, and so it almost feels, with the Joker as protagonist, it feels justified from that perspective. Yeah. So I do agree with that. I would say about the protesters, and maybe this is a leap, but if you think about the recent like American political situation, the fact that Trump can tweet something that's objectively false, filled with bad grammar, and just sounds like the ravings of an idiot, and still has millions of people cheering and supporting him, despite him like undeniably making fundamental errors of judgment. I mean, that's putting it very lightly. I think that is sort of not the main point of Joker, but I think that is one of the sort of points it's making. Like, even though he's a moron, and he does this whole, we live in a society, and he still has like a roaring fan base. That is, because it's cells of the internet which are like that. And that's sort of the point it's making. And I think, the point is we're not supposed to be cheering and being like, oh, wow, what a rousing speech. It's, Jesus, it's scary what people will rally behind if they think their weird, twisted world is being spoken for. And I think that's the main point of it.
I think that is probably the intended reading, but I find it's hard to read with, I don't know, the way it's edited, the score, the cinematography, to make him look like this superior figure. You know, when he's stood above everyone else and he raises his arms in like this Christ-like gesture of, you know, like, but that's the moment when you're like, oh, he is now the Joker. But that's the point. But also, it's just not. The point of the Joker is that he is, despite the audience liking him in The Dark Knight, all the characters within that universe either work for him, terrified of him, or hate him, you know?
Yeah.
And they only work for him because he's fucking rich. And, you know, he's fucking crazy. And no one wants to work with him because he's crazy, but he gets shit done, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas in the Joaquin Joker, you've got people cheering him who support him because they believe fundamentally in what he's doing. And I think you shouldn't show that. Or not that you shouldn't show it, or you just should villainize it a lot more than they do.
Yeah. I mean, I think, so the Joker as a film, I think there are definitely problems with the way it's presented. I think you're right. There's more they could probably have done to make it more clear whose side they're on. But I do think probably that was what they were going for. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There's definitely... the idea has, as many people know, it's been done before and better and like more clearly.
Yeah.
But I think it is interesting is like... It's like you're saying about, like, you know, how the Joker normally is like, you know, he's like this mad psychopath who's, everyone is either like working for him or just terrified / hated, you hate him. But then in this one, he has actual genuine supporters. And I think that's an important sort of evolution of the character for the modern age of like Trump, basically.
Yeah.
You know, because those old days of like clear good and evil are now behind us. And we're now in this new age of like, you know, even things you'd think would be objectively bad and evil have their supporters, and that's the world. And I think that's a lot of that is sort of the point of the Joker in this new one. But
yeah, that's fair. Anyway, that was a really random side tangent about the Joker that we talked about for ages.
Well, I mean, it's a relevant point.
Yeah.
Technically, we were still on correspondence. We haven't gone to the actual correspondence yet.
30 minutes in.
But yes, you do. You do have an element of correspondence for us, don't you, Andrew?
Well, yes. Penny. Fucking hell. Penny said that in response to your bit about animal cruelty.
Yes.
On Andrei Rublev.
Was that the correct Russian pronunciation?
I don't know.
I'm doing it wrong all this time.
She said that when you said, is that, you know, you were sort of more morally aligned with that than in Cannibal Holocaust, how they took a horse from the
slaughterhouse.
From the slaughterhouse. She pointed out that as soon as they took it from the slaughterhouse, that horse was then free. You know, that horse was then no longer going to be slaughtered because they had taken it away.
That is an interesting point, actually, yeah. Oh, yeah, we've messed up the first horse. We can just take, like, all of your stock and just, we'll use them all, don't worry. Be free.
Yeah.
But that is a point.
Do you see, like...
Yeah. And I'm not absolving Andrei Rublev. It's still, murdering a horse on screen. Yeah.
Yeah, like, they obviously shouldn't have done that. But, because our argument was, if the horse is, got to die, take it from a slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
Because it's going to die anyway. But then, as she points out, like, as soon as they take it away from the slaughterhouse, it no longer has to die.
Yeah.
It's then their choice to then kill it. Because they have then saved the horse from the slaughterhouse just to fucking kill it,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that angle to it.
I didn't think of that.
No, so, would you say Andrei Rublev is therefore, like, on the same side as kind of a Holocaust, rather? Like, would she draw the line past it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's closer to...
But she's okay with Apocalypse Now?
Well, she didn't talk about Apocalypse Now.
Oh, okay. Cool. Well, that's great. And extra contribution to the debate. That's exactly what I wanted. So, yeah. And if you at home have any contributions to the animal cruelty debate or anything else we've discussed in any of our episodes, or just want to contact us, send in some reviews or ideas, you you can send us an email at cinerambles@gmail.com. Probably a lot later in the episode than I usually do that.
Yeah.
Right. So, I want to briefly talk about Insidious.
Okay.
Because in our recent sort of horror discussions, we've been slanging off sort of mainstream horror films a lot. And, the ones that are sort of particularly aimed at teenagers that are all about, like, jump scares and going, boo, ah. And, like, I think we mentioned... Do we mention The Conjuring? Or just hint at it?
Yeah, I've talked about The Conjuring. Well, possibly. I can't remember if we talked about it specifically, but I've seen that film and I don't like it.
Yeah. But, yeah, we were talking about, like, there's some of those films which I consider to be, like, oh, they're actually quite good for that sort of subgenre of horror, which we've been about. So I thought I'd go and watch Insidious, which is one of the ones that's been talked about by people I respect as being good, and see what it's like. And to be fair, it's got actually, like, it's got a reasonable sort of backing behind it. So it's directed by James Wan, who did Saw, the first one.
Okay.
Which I don't know if you've seen, but it's quite a good film.
I have seen Saw, the first one.
Yeah.
Saw the first Saw, yeah.
You've seen Saw? That's not Saw.
Yeah, I saw Saw.
But yeah, I mean, Saw...
Saw C. Sorry.
Yeah, but Saw is basically like discount 7, and 7's fantastic. So I mean, discount 7 is still a solid film. So yeah, so it's directed by James Wan. It's also written by Lee Wanell. I feel like I'm almost certainly pronouncing that wrong, but that's the guy who directed Invisible Man, the new one.
Right.
And also had a hand in Saw. I think he wrote Saw as well.
Okay.
But yeah, so, two competent sort of modern horror director-writers behind it. And it's not a bad film. So basically, the plot is there's this mother and father, they moved into a new house, they've got their young children. And there's some sort of like mild, like, items are going missing. And then the child sort of falls off a ladder in the attic and ends up in a coma for months. And the doctors can't work out why he's in a coma, because he should be fine, but he is completely unresponsive. But then they start to be plagued by hauntings in this new house. There's like voices heard over the baby monitors. They see figures appearing and walking through the house and slamming doors and stuff. And eventually, like, right, this house is haunted. We're moving to a new house. The hauntings follow them to the new house. And they start to realise that the kid is sort of under threat of being possessed by some kind of demon from another plane. And it's sort of, I don't think this is a spoiler, but it gets into the idea of astral projection. And the idea is that the kid is basically like astral projected so hard out of his body that he's lost. And his body's like this empty vessel which a demon's now trying to claim for itself. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like a modern Exorcist, I guess, but it's a bit roundabout about it. Yeah, okay, so obviously our discussion is mainly about like the horror and like the jump scares. So I'll start with that. It's actually it's pretty restrained in that respect. Actually, it's got some jump scares, but they're quite subtle. Like, so if you think about in The Invisible Man with the when she's in the attic and we think he's there and she throws the paint and he's there, but then the music, like the score just peaks and it really uncomfortably. Yeah. There's nothing quite as egregious as that. There is, in fact, there's actually quite a nice one with like, so she's like walking around landing. She's heard things she thinks, there's something about. And she looks into the baby's room and there's a dark figure standing behind the like crib with like the sort of curtain, which is like semi-transparent, is in front of it. To the point that I didn't notice it at first. And then the fact that it was on screen for a while, when I finally I suddenly realised was actually really good. And it didn't go, okay, fine, it went wham a little bit, which is like, oh, am I supposed to be seeing something? Oh shit, it's there. Which in itself was quite good. And it's an aspect of horror I'd never thought of. Like, obviously when you have a jump scare, it's normally quite obvious what you're supposed to be jumping at. But imagine, like in video games when you hear the attack music and you can't see anything.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that. And that's actually an underrated source of horror of like, wham, wait, what have I not noticed? And when you see it and you're like, well shit, I'm really unobservant. I'd be dead.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, so there's some of that. Unfortunately, that gets less good as it goes on. There's a thing about in horror, like, the more you see of a creature, the less scary it's going to be because you can see it. And that's a lesson I think Insidious needs to learn. because it's well, so its main demon looks like Darth Maul. He's just a figure. He's a figure in black, and his head's like painted black, except for a massive red splotch in the front of his face, and he looks a bit angry. It's Darth Maul. And not only
a little bit angry.
Not only is it Darth Maul, he appears frequently in in full frame, in full focus throughout like the last 20 minutes of the film. So he's not. It just isn't scary because he looks like Darth Maul, and we see him so clearly, and it's like, come on, just that's what a lot of the horror of good horror films, like how fleetingly we see it, how we're not entirely sure what we even saw half the time.
The unseen figure.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, actually, talking of figures. So there's so there's a really great sequence towards the end of basically is this a spoiler? I don't know. Okay, fine. If you care about Insidious, this is it's a mild spoiler. It's not a massively spoilery film, but
that movie came out like a million years ago.
Yeah, it's like 10 years old. It's fine. But spoilers if you care. But yeah, so it's like the father is actually... The reason the kid's so good at astral projecting is the father is like a savant of astral projection. And so like the final set piece of the film is like the father's... What?
I said, for fuck's sake. Why is it that they're always just some fucking hippie bullshit about the film?
Well, I mean, but that's the thing. I mean, there's a sort of inherent thing with horror and the supernatural. You sort of got to buy into it. And to be fair, there's a whole thing, because they bring in these paranormal investigators, and the husband's like, this is bullshit, get out of my house. And then, but yeah.
But he's a fucking wizard, so it's fine.
I mean, the reason why I spoiled it is because it's a twist that like, oh, your mother hid it from you, but you're actually like the king of astral projection. That's why your kid's so good. But yes, but there's this whole end sequence. Basically, he astral projects and he goes through this. It's called the further, like it's this dimension between dimensions to find the kid and bring him back. And meanwhile, the demons are sort of there, and that's quite good. It gets into really, well, I mean, it could be quite interesting visually. It's not bad. It's just not very creative. Case in point, besides Darth Maul, the main creatures are just people, like just normal. Right. I mean, they're dressed in like Victorian era clothing, maybe Edwardian, and they appear like suddenly and they smile, but otherwise they're not that creepy. And we see a lot of them in full focus, fully in frame, and it's like, am I supposed to be scared of you? Also, not clear who they are, why they're relevant, because there's this ongoing thing about not ongoing. It's revealed that because the father's got no photo of himself as a boy, and his mother reveals it's because every time I took a photo of you, there was this creepy woman in the background, and every time I took a photo, she got closer, so I just stopped doing it. And it's something to do with astral projection, like a demon trying to get him. This, by the way, is never really properly explained beyond that.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, well, are the creepy women in the astral plane, are they the same women? They don't look anything like the women. Are they related? Who are these people? And that's never explained. And yeah, there's a point of horror of you don't explain things because the horror is the unknown. But there's a difference between horror of the unknown and horror of what the hell is going on. I have no concept of what the plot you're trying to get at is here, which I think is a big problem with it. And similarly, its ending is very sort of... It's sudden, and it's weird because it has a nice bit of closure to it. And then it's sort of... I guess it was going for a sequel hook, and there are 3 sequels, so I don't know. But it then ruins any closure it had by just ending really unsatisfyingly. But yeah.
Well, I feel like I'll avoid that like the plague.
Well, I mean, it's not a bad film. It was quite enjoyable. And again, I was impressed with how... competent the horror was. It never scared me. It at most mildly startled me.
Okay.
But, that's quite a fatal flaw of horror, to be honest, to not scare me. But to be fair, compared to other mainstream horror, it probably is better than a lot of it. It's not great.
Right.
But, also, there's this weird thing where the mother's set up to be protagonist. She's the first character we see. We spend the whole first half of the film was the mother looking after her kids and being oh, why is all this weird shit happening in my house? And it's all from her perspective. And the father's distant, not looking after the kids properly. He's staying late at work, specifically not to have to deal with this shit at home. And the whole first hour of this 100-minute film is all from the mum's perspective, and she is the main character. And then the climax of the film is entirely about the father doing it. And she just sits there giving words of encouragement. And it's how have you completely fucked up your protagonist? You had a protagonist. She was a good protagonist. She's had build-up. The father's like a side character. Why is he doing the main end bit? Have you not done screenwriting? Like Lee Wanell, I mean, Invisible Man wasn't great, but I mean, you're a decent writer. You clearly got some knowledge. I mean, Saul was great, and he wrote that.
Speaking of like creatures, and the seeing too much of it and all that, right? So in Stranger Things, like in the first series, in the first series, to be fair, you don't see much of the Demogorgon, but in the last few episodes, you see it a lot, and you do. There is, that you see it in the light, in focus, you know, and that it never lost its tension for me. I was never not scared of the Demogorgon because I was like, oh, fuck. I think that might be creature design as well because the Demogorgon looks really scary.
Was that season 2? Or
no, that's season 1 I'm talking about.
Oh, wait. Oh, it's season 1 specific. Okay. Well, wow.
Because in season 2 and 3 is a different thing. But
that's what I was going to say. But yeah. Okay. Well,
specifically in season 1, and I think I never think it loses its touch. Like, to be fair, you never see like a full picture of it until episode 6 or 5 or 6 or something like that. You always either see, the back of it, just its face, it run across something
we see
like that.
the really like poor quality photo in the the night from
But then you get the bit where 11 goes in the tank and she taps it on the shoulder, and and that's all very well lit because there's nothing else to distract you from just seeing it. Yeah. But then it's still really scary, I think. And then when it shows up to the buyer's house, and Nancy and Will fight it again, it's still really scary there.
Yeah. Well. So
I think that must be creature design then, because it shows you just as much as you see it all the time, but it's still a scary thing because I think it's so non-human.
Well, my question to that is, were you scared of the Demogorgon though? Because I was never scared by it.
You're not scared, but you're not scared the way like, oh, I'm shaking or whatever. But you're I don't know, what's the word to put?
Well, I'd say that's more tension. Like, no matter what, if you see of your creature, you still feel tension if your protagonists are in danger, and as long as they've been set up correctly, do you actually care for them? But I think, the Demogorgon doesn't, I don't tremble at night thinking about the Demogorgon. I don't turn off the lights in my room and be like, nope, shit, turning it back on. Unlike something
you do about SCP-173, despite it being like a fucking concrete dildo.
Yep, but the point of that is like the idea. That plays on fears of like I have fears of being like pursued and also being defenseless, which I think the containment breach the game plays into a lot of, which is why it has an effect on me. But that's the other thing is if we're going to go on a slight tangent about containment breach, so much of that game is so dark, and that's the fear of a dark. And then you do half glimpse things. The other thing with containment breach is the graphics are poorly anyway. So
yeah, they're awful.
But anyway, back to films. The main thing is, I think the if you think about, let's say like an Alien. Alien's a weird example because and playing Alien Isolation recently has reinforced this. I actually, the design of the creature is so good that I don't feel scared by it because every time I see him, I'm like, wow, look at that detail.
Right.
But I still feel tense, and my first time watching Alien was incredibly tense because it's masterfully done, and we see the great thing about Alien, and this works in Isolation as well, is you never quite know where the alien is or when it's going to pop up next, unless you know the film as well as I do. But and that's a big part of the not seeing. The whole thing about not seeing a creature clearly in a film is twofold. It's firstly, you don't know where it is at any given moment, and B, you don't know what it looks like. So, but yeah, creature design is certainly part of it.
Point there, yeah.
I think definitely there was an opportunity missed in having just it's a load of people and with white face makeup and Victorian clothes. Ooh.
Is that lack of budget, maybe?
I don't think so, because it seems too deliberate. And I'd like... Oh, okay, so there's some really... The paranormal investigator stuff is actually probably the best of Insidious. They come around and do the house and all this weird, pseudoscience shenanigans, and it's quite fun. And it's quite a good scene where she's communicating with through the unconscious body trying to reach from the astral plane, and basically she mutters indistinctly, and the guy with her on a team basically sketches what she says, and like the mother comes and looks at the picture and he's sketching furiously away, and there's this giant dark shadowy demon like over the bed, and it looks like something from the Babadook, which you haven't seen yet, but you will get a reference in a few weeks' time. But like it's this really great moment, like, oh holy shit, that's there, we can't see it, it's terrifying. And then we see it's Darth Maul, and he looks nothing like it. He's just a dude in red face makeup. And it's like, why are you so unsatisfying? And there's a bit where he's like climbing across the wall like Spider-Man. It's like, what are you doing? Why can't you come up with a better creature design when you had a better one in the film?
Oh, God.
Oh, man. Yeah. So last one, I'm going to close this out in Insidious. But like, so yeah, the seance scenes are really good. There's a specific scene where they're doing like a seance to communicate with the boy. And it's like, I mean, it's what you normally expect. They're sitting around a table sort of holding hands, like, can you hear me? But so the seance lady's got this like gas mask on, and she's like, you won't be able to hear what I'm saying because it's like I have to speak in this really low tone. But this guy will write it down. He can hear what I'm saying with headphones, and he'll transcribe it as I go, which is quite an interesting thing because there's this delay between stuff happening and then seeing what the result is. And it's like, but also they've got a camera rigged up, and it will trigger on any change in pressure or like, ultraviolet light or things like that. So there's great tension of like, we see them doing a seance and it's like nothing seems to be happening. And then the camera will just flash and you're like, well shit, something's happened. We can't see what it is, but something is happening on the astral plane around us. There is it's like I was saying the other week about, I can't remember what it was now. I think we were talking about cosmic horror, but like the idea of like, you're forming a negative image of a creature, not by seeing it, by seeing its impact on the world, by seeing the sort of its interactions with the world. We build up an image of what it is and where it is, and that's quite a good example because we see this camera flashing in reaction to things that are going on that this woman's saying, and it's like that, and that creates that sort of idea of like, without seeing the creature, of being like this constant presence that's all around us and we can't see and we can't do anything about, and that's good horror. So that was a good scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've just Googled Insidious, and one of the first search results is Insidious Darth Maul.
Yeah, I imagine it is it's probably quite a common concern because it looks so much like him.
I also then looked at the images, and the fucking monster in it looks so completely goofy.
Yeah, he does. He doesn't look scary, does he? He looks like a discount Darth Maul cosplay. It's like, that's the perfect summation, isn't it?
Do you know how in Lord of the Rings because of the prosthetics, half of the orcs couldn't close their mouths?
I did not know about that, but that's brilliant. Yeah,
it looks like that.
There is a jump scare moment where he sort of, the first time he appears and he's sort of just in the background, which is a bit of a blah moment, but But I mean, also in that, his mouth just gave here. He's like, hello. I laughed at that.
It looks like they've told him to be like, all right, you've got pointy teeth. We need to show off the pointy teeth.
Yeah. It does just look like a Halloween costume. Someone's going, scary.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah, so, all right.
It's got Patrick Wilson in it, though. He's a cool dude.
Oh, yeah, I think that's the dad in it, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, final point, and I think this is a nice way to close it out. I have a thing where once I watch a film, I go on Letterboxd and see what like popular reviews of it are, just to sort of compare opinions and stuff. And I saw a review of it, which I think in Spanish. So it's rated half-star. Don't see it. It's too scary. It's like, it's a horror film. What were you expecting?
Is that not the point?
Yeah, I mean, like, oh wow. I mean, I guess we've been wrong about horror all this time.
Too scary.
Half a star. At what point does a film become too scary? That it's that's a discussion for another day. But yeah, I mean, that's Insidious. I mean, it's not. I mean, I wouldn't rewatch it. I'm not gonna. Yeah, there's definitely good moments in it, but I don't think it's like. I would say it's like in terms of, so back to the debate about like modern horror. It's not in the same. It's definitely with the sort of those mainstream like aimed at teens. Boo It's just a bit more competent than usual, but it's still basically the same thing. It doesn't do enough to escape from that. So I'd still put it with that lot.
It's weird that in Lovecraftian stuff, I love the paranormal investigators, right?
Yeah.
I love you know, like in Mansions of Madness, you are just a group of randos who have gone in to investigate this weird happenings, this weird goings on. I love that idea of, you know, the private investigator who goes in and he specifies in these very weird things, or the professor who knows about these very, very obscure ancient civilization who happens to be a Cthulhu cult. You know, I love that. I love that because it's so weird and cool and fun. I despise paranormal investigators in, like, Insidious and in The Conjuring and all that bollocks, because they're just like, oh, through the power of God, we can do anything. And it's like, oh, fuck off.
I mean, that's not really how it is in Insidious. It's more science-based.
It's just so... You know, they walk in with all their fucking fancy science equipment and are like, oh, yes, we're going to do this. And it's like, oh, piss off. It's just, they're so... And I think this might be because there are so many stupid American TV shows that are like, you know, catching ghosts in real life or whatever.
Well, like Waking the Dead.
Yeah, that just makes me feel like immediately these people are just complete, you know, con men, and they're just full of bollocks, and I just fucking hate them. But also, I hate the idea of, I don't know, this is in The Conjuring, it was definitely like this. I haven't seen Insidious. But, you know, it was like, oh, through the power of Christ, oh, we'll get a priest and it will sort this out. And the priest, that, you know, just like, oh, no, I can't do this. And it's like, the main guy is actually also a priest or whatever. And it's like, okay, I'll do it then. It's like, just fuck off. Oh, I don't know, maybe. I could be misremembering that.
Well, I mean, Insidious, it's quite funny because it's like, because there's the seance lady and it's like two, like, technicians essentially, and they're the comic relief of the film, and there's a lot of sort of like, oh, look at him with his tools, it's basically a modified tool, it's like, hey, it works. But then the thing is, you know, and they're introducing us this way of like, oh, maybe this is gonna like, you know, this won't do anything good, they're just gonna like, it's all like pseudoscience. But then like there's a great moment where he's like, he sort of looks through these like different lenses and it's supposed to compare ultraviolet light or something, I don't know. But then he sees like the women there and it's like, oh shit, this is a real one, this is genuine. So I mean, right. I don't know. But it's interesting though, you reminded me of another point I was going to make, which is like, I find it really strange, and I think this is just to do with how films work. But like whenever you watch like a horror film or anything with like a supernatural element, and like there's always a bit where like the person doesn't believe the protagonist is like, you're making shit up. I'm going to get the psychiatrist and get you arrested because you're mad. And I always feel so insanely frustrated by it. I was like, no, she's right. You're an idiot. But if that happened in real life, it would be the other way around. And it's like such a weird paradigm because whenever I watch them, like, I mean, you're right, but you're not right. And it's, But you remind me of that.
But that's audience perspective as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is, yeah. But it's interesting how, because I get like almost like vitriolically angry when I watch a film that they don't believe the protagonist. Like, that really triggers me for some reason. I mean, it's like, but that is the sane response. If that happened in real life...
Have you ever seen Unsolved Mysteries?
I have not, no. Is that a docu-series?
Sort of.
Reality, it's like docutainment.
Yeah. It's like I think it's 90s, possibly, older. I don't know. Basically, it was like, when we lived in Portsmouth, and before we had the internet, we had to watch live TV.
Oh, the horror.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of the only channels we could get, and all they fucking played was Unsolved Mysteries, right? So we watched a lot of Unsolved Mysteries in a very short period of time. But Unsolved Mysteries is very, very strange, because it's got a lot of, like, true crime things, like murders that have never been solved, or, you know, kidnaps that have never been solved, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it has them, and it does these really amazing things, you know, showing, like, how these are real. And it's like, oh, if you have any information about this, you know, come to us. And loads of these crimes have been solved through them showing these things. Wow. Tagged onto this, however, is also a load of paranormal bollocks. Because there's also, and apparently the host absolutely hated doing these. He always thought they were because this show did and was proven to genuinely help. Like, they solved a load of murders and robberies and stuff.
Wow.
But then they've got all this paranormal bollocks, and they'd always chunk one in the episode, and it would just completely fucking ruin it. And you could tell, because the host would just be completely sarcastic the whole time, like, because he obviously didn't believe it. But they would treat it as seriously as the fucking murders.
I mean,
and
yeah,
it'd be like, oh, this man went into a house and he swore it was haunted. And it's like, well, it obviously fucking isn't. Can we go back to the important stuff, please? And it's like, oh, we're going to stay with him because he swears it's haunted, and every night a spooky woman comes to see him, and they set up a camera and they show you the footage throughout the night and nothing happens. And the guy's like, oh, that's weird. It hasn't happened for the first time in 3 days. It's like,
must be quantum mechanics. When it's observed, it doesn't do anything.
It's like, fuck you. You're obviously full of complete bollocks. Can you just fuck off? Well, that is interesting because you were right. Because in real life, I would just immediately assume that person was an attention-seeking arsehole or fucking mental.
I mean, that's an interesting combination to have. Like, it seems almost like insulting to be like, in tonight's episode, the murder of this 13-year-old girl and, you know, a horrible rape of this person. Also, there's something spooky in a barn. Like, that's... like that just seems like yeah, like it's really disrespectful, and like that's just a different type of show.
Yeah,
like there's mysteries, but there's bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. It's just mad that they went with that decision as well, and it's so weird and it's so bad. Oh. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Unsolved Mysteries just really triggered me there. But some of them were amazing. Like they caught this. There was one about this man. They found out that he was a con man, and then they do an Unsolved Mysteries Revisited.
Oh.
And through the thing, someone was currently like they'd watched the show about this con man, and they'd had like a picture of the con man, and they'd contacted the show being like, I know that guy, I work with him, and then that guy got arrested. And loads of people got all their money back because he was this massive con man, and the show then saved the people he was currently conning from being conned. And it's like, that's a really good story. And the Unsolved Mysteries Revisited is really good because that's when you see them all the cases they've then solved and stuff. And it's like, this is such a genuinely like force for good.
Yeah. That shows the power of like media when used used properly for good.
Why are you muddying it with obvious bullshit?
Were there any UFO stuff in there? Was there like, or the abductions and stuff?
Oh, I don't know. It was mostly like, oh, this is a spooky house, but as soon as the cameras show up, nothing happens. Well, there you go. Sorry, but that was a complete random tangent. I've thrown all the tangents in today.
It's a Ciné Ramble.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that ends it for this week's episode of Ciné Rambles. You've been listening to Nick.
And Andrew.
You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/CinéRamblesOfficial.
And you can follow us on Twitter at Ciné Rambles.
And for more content, you can read the blog over at cinerambles.blogspot.com.
And you can always send us an email at, are you ready? Are you ready, Nick? This is the first time.
Go on, yeah.
cinerambles@gmail.com.
Whoa! Never heard that before. Yeah, so, Andrew, any final remarks?
Yeah, Nick, I'm getting a strong vibe. Wait a second, Nick, is that Jar Jar Binks behind you?
Ah! Me's so scared! Good night.
Re-edit. Goodbye.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say they should re-edit a load of horror films, but replacing the thing, whatever the monster is, with Jar Jar Binks.
You know, that's a shitpost waiting to happen. Let's do it.
Yeah. Anyway, bye.
Goodbye.
Okay, so on the 20th of June, Nick, our other podcast that we do, Dice Dice Baby, which is a Dungeons & Dragons podcast, where I take Nick and some other friends and we blunder through a load of stuff and no one pays attention to anything. So if that
sounds about right. Very accurate description.
Yeah. We are taking that to Twitch, so we're going to start live streaming that. We're going to live stream weekly, starting on the 20th of June at 12 p.m. BST.
And what is the Twitch address they can find us at?
It's twitch.tv/DDB podcast.
All one word? Any hyphens?
All one word.
All one word. Okay.
So come along and check us out and give us a watch, because it'll be fun.
Yeah, and see me roleplay appallingly.
Yes. And we might even show Nick's horrendous drawings.
Please don't.